Just about some few weeks ago, I interviewed Dr. Tunde Adegbola on the Yoruba perspective on gender. I asked him several questions, and the doctor submitted or argued that the Yoruba does not do gender. Now, many people found it hard agreeing with Baba. So many people say things like, for the first time, I have to disagree with you. That is very understandable. But I think many people disagreed because they didn't understand what Baba was really saying. Dr. Tunde Adegbola established a clear difference between sex and gender. While one is biological, the other is a social construct. We examined the meanings of Yoruba words like ako and abo, but many people disagreed, claiming that it is wrong to say that the Yoruba does not do gender. So I went back to Baba and conducted another interview. This time around, Baba made the same point in a more detailed manner, more elaborate, comprehensive, and easy to digest. So I titled the interview, Yoruba Does Not Do Gender, Part 2. Ladies and gentlemen, have some fun.
All right, sir. So our last discussion on gender in the Yoruba position has generated some kind of heated discussions, and many are saying that.
I mean, that's really, really good. It means that people are really taking these things seriously, and I thank everybody, particularly those who disagreed with me, because they caused me to look deeper and try to say what I was trying to say in a more digestible way. Yeah, because I think many people misunderstood me, but then it gave me the opportunity to present it in a better way, at least to myself.
So, sir, I think one part where the people seem not to really understand is the part where the differentiating between gender and biological sex.
Yes. You see, biological sex is a natural phenomenon bestowed on humans genetically for reasons of reproduction, because it takes the two to come together to reproduce. So there's that difference, and you find it in most, if not all, of life. It extends from human life to lower animals and spills over into plant life. Anything called life, there's that need for two to come together to reproduce. Of course, there are exceptions here and there, but generally. So that is biological sex. Now, the biological endowments based on sex have other social consequences. That is where gender starts coming in.
So gender is a social construct.
It is a social construct. It is about how to organize society around the strengths, weaknesses of men, strengths, weaknesses of women.
So, your position is that Yoruba don't do gender.
Well, fundamentally, there's a difference between biological sex and gender. So the first problem we have is that because many of us were taught that gender and sex mean the same thing in English classes. But it's not an issue really in language. It's talking about sociology, we are talking about anthropology. And so that's why we now think that, gender is another word for sex. It is not totally true. If gender and sex can be used interchangeably, then it means that in France, a pen has XX chromosomes and a ruler has XY chromosome, because pen is lo stylo, a ruler is la règle. Because the French take gender to the point where they bifurcate every noun into masculine, feminine. Certainly, that is not biological sex. They are not saying that the ruler is male and the pen is male and the ruler is female. So let's be clear about that.
Gender and sex are not...
They are not the same thing. Now, the way a society organizes the idea of gender and sex comes out in their language. The importance, the the level of sex that is involved in their understanding of gender comes out in their language.
It's good you've talked about language.
Yes, that is. No, when I said that Yoruba doesn't do gender, what I'm talking is actually Yoruba language. I'm not saying Yoruba people. Yoruba language doesn't. So if a language so respects the differences between the gender differences to the extent that they make a distinction between pen and ruler, then that's a lot more, in French, for example, it's a lot more than the English respect gender, in which they make a distinction between a brother and a sister, which is a lot more different from how we, the Yoruba, don't make a distinction between sister and brother. We don't even have no distinction between niece and nephew, no distinction between uncle and auntie, no distinction between actor and actress, no distinction between waiter and waitress, no distinction between ambassador and ambassadress. And with developments in thinking, even the English language is beginning to adjust to adopt gender-free language. That's why they don't talk about chairman anymore. They talk about chairperson. Because they don't want to make a distinction between a chairman and a chairwoman. That is why they are beginning, they stop to use a word like fireman. It's a firefighter rather than fireman or firewoman. A policeman, policewoman.
You don't have a gatekeeper. Not a gate man.
Not a gate man. So these are some of the dynamisms of culture and the dynamics of society.
Okay, so specifically now, some talked about Abo, Ako, Obi, and...
Well, you see, Abo and Ako, Obi, and all that, they did not start from sex in Yoruba. They started from an idea that goes far, 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 far beyond sex. Such that Ako talks about grit, talks about metal, valor, strength, bravery, and such things, which, like I said, are roles appointed to male for the organization of society.
So it is first about the grit and metal,
and male happens to
those.
Yeah, so that's why
for them.
Ako.
So it is not from.
It is not male and female. Then Abo is the same. Abo is grace, finesse, gentility, ease, softness, productivity, and reproductivity.
Wow.
And they notice that
then we use it for them. So it is first about
grace. Ako Okuta is about grit. Akoshu is about grit of Akoshu. Obishu is about the gentility, the softness of Obishu. So it is not from sex to Ako Okuta. It is from a general concept that we now
was applied
to biological sex. Wow. So that is what Yoruba.
I don't think anybody is going to disagree with this because it's clear.
Well, it's okay. If anybody disagrees, we can discuss it.
Exactly.
I mean, nobody has the final say in these things. I am too willing to take in other ideas, because when we accept other people's ideas, we get the opportunity to grow our knowledge. We know because ẹnìkan ò gbọ́n tán. Yorùbá ní ọgbọ́n ọlọ́gbọ́n ni ò jẹ́ ká pàrọ̀ àgbàlagbà ń wèrè. Ọmọdé gbọ́n, àgbà gbọ́n la fi dálé Ẹ̀fẹ̀.
Ẹ dákun, ẹ tún bá wa ṣe àlàyé lórí bẹ́ẹ̀ ṣe torí kò yá wọn kan ẹ sọ̀rọ̀ nípa pé obìnrin ń ṣakọ, pé obìnrin fakọyọ. Ẹ tún bá mẹ́nu bà díẹ̀ lórí àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ yẹn.
Gbogbo àwọn nǹkan tí mo kàálẹ̀ lóyìnbó yìí pé ó bá akọ mu. Àwọn bíi pé kéèyàn lákínkanjú, kó lágbára, kó nígboyà, kó jẹ́ pé ó ní faradà. Gbogbo orú nǹkan bẹ́yẹn àwọn yẹn ló bá akọ lọ. Àwọn tó bá akọ lọ, tó bá abo lọ, àwọn yẹn dàbí kéèyàn ní ìwà pẹ̀lẹ́, kéèyàn ní ẹ̀sọ̀, kéèyàn ní ìwà àti ìṣe tó ń ṣe ìtọ́jú ọmọ, tó fi jẹ́ wípé tí a bá fẹ́ kí ayé run, a ní láti fún àwọn ìwà àti ìṣe yẹn ní ipò tó ṣe pàtàkì.
Torí ọwọ́ ipá ò ṣe fi tọ́mọ.
Ọwọ́ ipá ò ṣe fi tọ́mọ. Torí ẹ̀ lọ fi sọ pé tá a bá sọ pé ọdún àyàbò, a sọ pé ọdún yẹn máa dobìnrin. Kan tá à ń sọ ni wípé ọdún yẹn
ọwọ́ ẹ̀rọ ni ó bá wa.
Ọwọ́ ẹ̀rọ ló máa bá wa. À bímọ, à lówó, à lọ́lá, ọmọ ọkùnrin àbíró, obìnrin àbíyè. Ìtumọ̀ ọdún àyàbò nìyẹn. Ìpọ́dún máa jóbìnrin.
Abo and akọ is not about male and female.
No. Let me bring in a small lesson in cognitive psychology. Human beings, we do not see the world as a collection of things. That's what we will think. You think you will see we know. We see the world as a collection of group of things, and it is for what we refer to as cognitive efficiency. So instead of having to remember the qualities and the features of each and every one thing, those we have met and we have not met, once we can bring a number of things together into a class, we can then give attributes to that class, so that anybody that belongs to that class already we know has that attribute. The poultry farmer that goes to buy a day-old chick has never seen that chick lay eggs. But because it belongs to a class of avians, it is not going to give birth to a bird. It's going to lay an egg. And I've come to intercept the egg. So that is the idea of concept. And that is the first step in human intelligence. By not seeing the world as a collection of single individual things, objects, that we see it as collection of things, class, concept, that is our first step in intelligent behavior. So in the same way, we looked at this ideational spectrum, and Yoruba looks at one and says, on this extreme there's Ako, on this extreme there is Abo. And every other object, every other thing in our reality, we can put into either of these two classes, so that we find it easier to reason with the classes rather than reasoning with the individual elements of each of the two sets.
So ẹni tí ó bá jẹ́ olórí kunkun, a máa pè ní alákọ̀rí.
Akọ wà ní akọ olórí ẹ̀, olórí akọni.
So it now makes sense that it's never about. It's never about.
Orí ẹ̀ dàbí orí akọ òkúta. Alákọ̀rí ni ẹ̀. Alákọ̀rí. Obíṣu ewùrà. Tó yẹ pé ṣùgbọ́n ó ṣe é ṣìṣe kọ̀ọ̀kọ̀ rẹ̀, ó ṣe é dín jọjọ. Òun la olóbíṣu abíyakọ́dí àwọn oríṣiríṣi iṣu tó jẹ́ pé tó bá gún níyàn báyìí tó máa dìde jànyìn. Obídìẹ. That is a female adìẹ. So this thing, I wasn't saying that Yoruba doesn't take account of men as different from women. What I'm saying is that the Yoruba language, the attitude to gender is not such that we want to make a distinction between a female sibling and a male sibling. We don't care. A sibling is a sibling. What matters to us is Shegboni Ababuro, which is beginning to manifest Akọ versus Abo again. Though at a lighter level. So that is the reality. And if we sit down and think through it, we'll see that you see, the long and short of all this, we've all been confused by the English language and English culture. Because somehow, without thinking about it, we are aspiring to be Englishmen and women. And in the process, so really, what concerns us about sex and gender? If not that we learned English. Akọ Anabo takes care of it now. Akọ Anabo takes care of it.
If not that we have to speak the English.
If not that we have to say sex and gender, we won't have that. We won't have that disagreement. We won't have that conversation. Akọ abo oti ko gbogbo ẹ. Obishu, amobishu, amakoshu, amaka okuta. Obìnrin tó ń ṣakọ àsọgbó ti dọkùnrin.
Because it was never about sex.
No.
That's why we can use it for okay.
Yes, you can use it for because it's not sex. You can use it for a woman who is exhibiting grit, valor, strength, and all that. And that's obìnrin tó ń ṣe bí ọkùnrin. Because you associate that grit and all that with men, and you have classified as akọ. Where you may have again obìnrin tó ń ṣe bí ọkùnrin, have ọkùnrin tó ń ṣe bí obìnrin.
I think it's also very enlightening what is said about Yoruba words, that go the women and always having the bees.
Bees and the women K. Yes. Yes. And it didn't come from sex. It came to sex. It came to be used to describe the distinction between the sexes.
So Akin is not about male or female.
No.
Akin just means strength.
Strength, valor. Yeah. If we simplify these things, if we sometimes oversimplify it the way the English language, our half understanding of English language, because it's all half understanding of English language without really understanding the culture that produced the language that is causing all this controversy.
So Ejo, now it's becoming very important that we talk about gender equality. From the standpoint of the Yoruba, what is the Yoruba position on gender equality?
I don't think Yoruba has ever struggled with the idea of gender equality because genders are not equal. Two things that are not the same cannot be equal. The fact that two things are different does not make them equal. We may now want to go to equal importance, equal role, equal and all this.
Equity.
Thank you. Equity rather than equivalence. Equity rather than equality. It's the Canadian psychologists proved it beyond all reasonable doubts that there must be equality of opportunities, but there can never be equality of outcomes. Because if you leave men and women to do things according to their own wills, men and women will go into separate boxes. And he says that men are more interested in things, while women are more interested in people. And thus you'll find a lot more women in professions that have to do with people, including medicine, in some parts of the world where men and women are allowed to have their ways. So in Yoruba thoughts, the roles that women do better are naturally allocated to women. The roles that men do better are naturally allocated to men. There are situations in which the roles may merge, but there are examples in orature that tell us that the kind of unfair distribution of resources is not acceptable in Yoruba culture, because there's the story of when things were not going well on earth, and the Orisha went to Olodumare to ask for solution. And Olodumare looked at those that came and said, all you that have come are men. Where are the women amongst you? And you know the way people think on the obìnrin àtẹ̀yìntọ̀ nínú gbogbo tá à ń sọ yìí. And Olodumare said, what do you expect? If you think that way, then things cannot go well with you. So go back, go and regard your women, and your world will work well. Wọ́n sì dé, wọ́n ṣe bí wọ́n ṣe ní kí wọ́n ṣe. Eku bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní ké bí eku, ẹyẹ ń ké bí ẹyẹ, ọmọ èèyàn ń fọhùn bí èèyàn.
Àtọ́ bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní dánmọ́. Bàbá gbé wa débẹ̀.